of the Coastal Resiliency Commission. The agenda, I didn't put approval of minutes on it because I know the minutes for January went out late. So I thought we'd just do approval for minutes in January and February. We'll do that in March. So I didn't add it to the agenda because I don't think anybody really got a chance to look at them. So I'll do that we'll do that on the agenda in March. The first thing on the agenda, Graham and I met on the phone, Zoom, with Al and Peggy Lyons. Sort of, okay, it was sort of a, where are we now with the Coastal Resiliency Commission? As far as status and the things that Peggy and Al had on their minds were, a variety, it was actually it was a variety of things. Let me see. I wrote some of these things down so I wouldn't try and not forget them. One of the things, so it was basically, what are the next steps? What does the Coastal Resiliency Commission want to do next? What's their next step? And one of the things that came up was the charge of the commission itself. Peggy's view of it is that it's not particularly well written. It's maybe not as specific as it could be in some places and too broad in other places. So one of the things that we have on our to-do list is to review the charge, see what we're really doing versus what was initially thought we were going to be doing, and then our own input as what is it we should be doing, right? So coming from us, so we'll have some ability to change, update, amend, whatever word you want to use, the charge of the commission. And I think that'll help. Now wouldn't be a bad time to do it because we've been doing this for a little while now. And it would be, I want to be sure that we're doing things that are concretely moving us forward. And based on current information of, okay, based on the experience to date, how would we improve our charge? What should we omit or change or whatever? So that was one thing she brought up. Another one was, let's see. Oh, no, this, and I've thought about this since we started. Is and we'll have to think about some about this. What's the how many members of the commission should we have? What's the best operating model as far as we started out with 18 people, and that was just a product of my view and what I believe is the case. That was just a product of when the call went out to the townspeople that might be interested in joining the commission. They got way more volunteers than they expected, than they typically get for various boards and commissions. So because of this, and because we got so many, Tom Banish at the time said, there's a lot of people with a lot of skills here and some really good backgrounds. We should take them all. And so we did. And we've dropped a few over time. Those that didn't have enough time to do it, had other commitments. Some moved out of town, others, so we've slowly dropped the number, but it comes to the point of we need to establish this, and this was part of the charge. We need to Al's stuck in the waiting room. Okay.
All right, that sounds good.
So part of that was, Al, are you there?
Finally.
Right.
Good evening.
You passed the test and we let you in. Congratulations. I was just going over, summarizing some of the points that we had the other day with Peggy and Graham. And I had started off briefly talking about the charge and our Peggy's interest in having us update that and probably get a little specific in some areas and a little broader on some potentially. Her view, as you know, you were there, that it's not particularly well written, and it needs to be updated and cleaned up. And it's actually a pretty good time, since we have some experience doing it now. We'll probably have some better insight into what we should be doing. And so that we could, make the charge a little more relevant to what our real plans are. And that's how I view it. So, and then I was just talking about the idea of one of the other subjects that came up was how many members of the commission should we have? And we started out with 18. I think we're down to 14 or 15 now. I don't have a number in mind, except it's lower than 14 or 15. We don't have to, and by the way, we're not going to decide this now. I'll just give you my initial thinking on it. I like the concept that we did, because, and it really was a matter of numbers when it first started out. We divided it into 3 groups of telecommunications policy and technology, or not telecommunications, but communications policy arm and a technology arm. And I think, given all the subjects and the expertise, frankly, that the commission needs, that's not a bad model. So I'd like to be able to keep it, at least can certainly be talked out of it, but I'd like to be able to keep it enough people to be able to fill those roles. And it may be, I don't know what the number is.
Just a question. It's policy, tech. Remember,
policy, technical or technology, and communication.
We have 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
I didn't know we had a 4th. Okay, good.
No, if I said we had a 4th, I misstated.
No, you didn't. You didn't say it. I just was making a note.
Okay, so I suppose we don't have to do it that way, but I think we sort of played to what we had when we started. We should organize it and get the members to a number that is a little more manageable. And we would not do that by having people tell them they're out. We would just naturally grow, get there through attrition. Just natural people losing interest, moving away, having other priorities that they have to deal with. But then the other side of it is another part of that, which we're going to get to at some point, but it's not something that we're going to figure out tonight, is, okay, if we have members leaving that are within that designated number of, the people we want to have on, what's that process? Where do we find the people to come on? And so I know there's a process for boards and things to go through the parties. I think for the needs, for some of the needs for this commission, that may not work as well as it does for other departments and boards, only because, particularly on the technical side, I do think we need a strong technical arm for this, and not everyone has that technical background to provide that. And that, you could say the same thing for policy and communication, but I think when I think about who are the people we really want, it's people that, from a technical perspective, you don't want me on technical, because I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to be able to do that stuff. So, and I wouldn't want somebody to come and say, hey, you want to be on this? And by the way, you're with the technology people, and you're not, you don't have the background.
I get you. Who's left on technical that we still have? We have Woody was on, I don't know, Graham was technical. Woody was policy. Who else was technical?
Graham, Rob Sonison, and David Clark.
Oh, of course, David has all that experience having been with the town, and Rob has lots of experience.
So we have three. Now, we are very fortunate to have 3 really good technical people.
Let me just say this about the process. We were pretty good when we originally did this in 2019. There were interviews conducted by Tom Banish, first selectman, and Al was there. We did them together, and people could be unaffiliated and come in, and the conclusion was just to take lots of people who had good backgrounds. If you look at the resumes of that group, from a point of view of having a variety of experiences from communications to technical or policy, we had a good group and they took them all and I don't know, this is what you're looking at. We cleverly, or Al and Tom, or Tom cleverly designed it so you had an executive committee and then we had all the others so we could get everybody in, and then we did the groups.
Yeah, I'm not, if we change, I'm not suggesting that we change that. I think that's a good model. It's
it is. I was just going to say, the reason I went through the background, if we ended up with fewer people, you don't necessarily need to distinguish between executive committee and other. You could just have, if you get down to 12 people or something like that, if you're back at the number of 15, 16, I agree with you, we'd stick with an executive committee. But just something to think about as we think about what's the right number.
Yeah, and that may be something that we want to continue or not continue, and depending on what the optimal, what we think the optimal number is, and then what does that mean relative to, operating effectively and efficiently. And frankly, I think part of the deal, at least in my view, is making sure, aside from the people that are the way it's built now, is you have the executive committee, and then you have a group that, if an executive committee place opens, I want to get to a place where we have that group, that's, if we keep the current model, that the alternates are that's the bench. They come off the bench and they join the executive committee and fill that role, and that can be dependent on whatever skills they have to pick which person that might be, so that they have the experience of being here already, and then going forward, in that different role for them. So, but that's just my thought. It's not something that we're going to end up doing, but it's just my initial reaction to the idea of being able to look at how we're organized and changing the charge and sort of modeling what's the most optimal structure for us. That's all. Those are just my thoughts. I'm open to hearing anybody else in tonight or any other time, and I can be persuaded with a good story. So I'm not locked in. So that came. Any thoughts on any of that?
Hank, I can respond to one of your questions, and that is, if and when it is time to repopulate this committee, it's up to the selectmen to find qualified people. I don't think, while we could certainly look to the political parties in town to suggest nominees, I think for an undertaking like this, I think the selectmen might want to continue to do the interviewing themselves, because we are looking for a certain specialized background. And so it's not the committee's responsibility to replenish itself. It's really the selectmen's responsibility, if and when we need more participants.
Okay, that's fine. If that's going to be the process, I just want to be. I think part of it is I just want to be real clear on what the process is.
Certainly, you as committee members.
It might be my fault. I haven't been.
Yeah, certainly, you as committee members can help identify people in the community that you think should be considered, but it's up to the selectmen to sort of do the enticing, get the word out, do the interviewing, and try to develop a balanced committee that has the right skill sets on it.
Okay, that's great. Oh, yes, Joe.
Yeah, my question then, let me see if my question to Al would be then, what is the basis for our commission? Is it going to be in the charter? Is it going to be, legislative? What is it? Can you tell me, what do we owe our existence to? The will of the first select person?
This is a commission that, as I recall, has been created by an ordinance. Aaron, I might ask you to kind of double check my memory on that, but this is an official element of town government, Joe. This is not just a whim of a couple of selectmen, if that's what you're asking me.
Yeah, okay. I just want to know the basis of our existence legally.
I believe the basis is a full-blown ordinance has created this commission.
Okay.
Aaron has an answer.
I think
Go ahead,
you're right. And it may actually, I'll have to pull it up, and I'm just looking real quick, but I think that's exactly how.
Yeah, I mean, I think the website, which has our website, CRC, links back to that action taken by the Board of Selectmen. So it actually is an ordinance taken by the Board of Selectmen. What's surprising about all of this is,
It's a
we look at that-
resolution. Yeah.
yeah, it's a resolution. Is that an ordinance or just a resolution?
I don't know. Well,
Yeah,
let
it's
me
a
pull up the
resolution.
town code.
Yeah, you have to see whether it rises to that. It isn't, it's
I wasn't
specifically,
prepared for that question
no, well,
tonight,
here's an easier question, Aaron.
but it's
Did
easy
they
to
ha-
find out.
Here's an easier question. Did they have a coastal resiliency commission in Guilford?
No.
Okay, that's an easy answer.
It was the Flood and Erosion Control Board.
Who had that. And let's go back, as you look back, and Al, and I'm sure you're closer to this looking forward. I don't know much about the Charter Commission, but I was chatting with Joe McDougall yesterday, and it looks like the commission, the revised charter would leave all of the commissions to the Board of Selectmen to adopt those by ordinance. So they would not be in the commission. They would not be a part of the charter. They would be part of action. The charter would delegate that, or not delegate it, but say that the Board of Selectmen will set up these commissions, all of them. Do I have
That's
that right?
correct, Walter. That's correct.
Yeah. And I don't think there's going to be opposition to that. It just means, though, now where we are right now, and this is back to Aaron, do we have to, when the Board of Selectmen come back to restating what our charge is, will it have to go from resolution to ordinance to make, and would that just fit with the new charter anyway? So
The
that's something.
Walter, the selectmen have the authority to change the charge to this commission at any time.
And that's a resolution, but the ordinance, this goes back to the issue of what's the difference between a charge and an ordinance? A charge, I know, is if you run into somebody in the basketball court, but this is a different kind of charge.
This was, you were not created via ordinance. There is no reference to the Coastal Resiliency Commission in the code. This was, it was done by resolution.
Yeah.
creating
So
the commission.
I think, so does this make sense to you, Al, and probably to Aaron, that if we restate what our charge is, that it will be done through maybe, and set up this commission, it might be done through an ordinance. I'm not saying that is what we're going to do, but is that what you're thinking we would do?
It doesn't necessarily have to go that way. I think some things may reflect back to an ordinance if, for example, the Flood and Erosion Control Board was, if you were also named the flood, in instances like that where there is ordinance language appointing a different agency that you would also serve as. But no, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Al. I don't think it does have to go through an ordinance unless the town was specifically creating a policy.
Yeah. So
Walter, I'm not sure what you're trying to get at exactly, but this entity is fully under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. This entity called the Commission reports to the Board of Selectmen. And through the voters, we have the authority to give you a charge, to give you your marching orders.
right. Well, Al, just so we understand this, then we'll let it go on. Compared to, some of us are not so familiar with other commissions, but let's say the Conservation Commission. That was established probably on an ordinance or may not be, but it's still subject to the views of the Board of Selectmen, correct?
That is correct. The charter sets up the Board of Selectmen as the ultimate power granting authority in town.
Okay, so this doesn't make, CRC is not a specialized animal in this regard. You could do this just like conservation or.
Yes.
Flood and erosion is some state.
Well,
conservation
is a little different, that there are statutes setting that help establish the roles of a conservation commission. So yes, the creation of that commission, it has to be in accordance to the enabling law.
Right, and wasn't wasn't this commission set up in response to a state statute?
It was set up in response to, yes, Public Act 18-82, which requires municipalities to plan for the potential impact of climate change and sea level rise.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that, based on that this is the way the town went about
Got it. Okay, I'm
complying
fine.
with that.
So, but Hank, it's easy to it's understandable we redo this charge. COVID-19 separated all this stuff. You look at the charge that Aaron's looking at now, or the ordinance, our plan was supposed to be delivered 18 months from August of 2019. We've missed that 18-month goal a long time ago.
Yeah,
So-
no, and I may have misstated, but my point of my comment relative to the charge was not to start over or make
Yeah. I got you.
but to update it, edit it where appropriate, update it appropriately, and then move forward.
Got it. Okay.
Right. Once it's accepted, then the Board of Selectmen would either accept or amend or not accept the suggested changes we have, and then we'd move forward based on what their take on it is. And since the Flood and Erosion Control Board came up, that came up in our call fairly briefly, like, should that be part of what we do? Subcommittee within the group, or however that might work out. So we should, in our thinking about what we do and what we should be doing, that we should at least have an opinion on that subject and how best to move forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing. Al probably has views. Aaron too might have some advice for us as to where we should be, what we should be thinking about. I know I talked, there is some additional powers that the state statute has given to flood and erosion control boards. Madison could have a CRC and a flood and erosion, or they could be combined in some way. I don't know whether that should be considered, but I certainly think we should talk about that but not just, we just can't wing it. We'd have to talk about it with Al and with Aaron and Peggy and others about whether that makes sense.
Yep.
And I think it'd be good to get some advice on this point from Joe McDougall as to what he thought might be good on this.
Yep. So, and then what other subjects came up? Oh, the floodplain ordinance. It still hasn't been updated since 2016. There are issues that we still need to get to. The first time around was difficult, and for a variety of reasons. But Peggy and I think Al also, supported the idea of, going in, reviewing it again, updating where we can update it, and maybe not doing it all in one big sweep, but saying, okay, here's what the floodplain ordinance is. Here are areas that we need to update it, which will be more doable than other areas, and take a shot at those areas that we can do something, and where we think that we might have issues in other areas, maybe put that off for 6 months or a year and come back to it at some point. But the idea was we shouldn't, her view at least was we should not be letting it just stay where it is, that it needs to be moved forward in its current state is not acceptable. So I don't have a lot of details on that, but the idea was it's been sitting on the shelf since the last meeting with the Board of Selectmen, and she would like to see it. And I'm assuming the other board and the other members of the board are supportive of moving forward and doing what we can, what's doable. My comment to her and to Al was, yes, that's something we can certainly look to do and update and do it hopefully without quite the brouhaha that we went through before. But the one comment I did make was, if we take that on and if we do it, because now it's just the fact that we're now that FPO word or letters is sort of a target. It's a red, it's a red flag in front of the bull, and we don't really want that to happen. So, and part of mitigating that is the idea that we're going to have to be much closer in contact with the Board of Selectmen, who ultimately will decide, yes or no on this stuff, rather than sort of the distanced model that we had previously, right? So if we're going to take one step at a time, it's going to be, okay, we're going to take a step. How does everybody feel about that? And it's going to be, some heavy lifting, and it's going to take a little while, but I said, I don't want to get in there and go through what we went through previously. And which I described, I don't know if it was correctly or not, but in the call the other day, I described it as almost adversarial with the board, which I don't think was ever intended to be, but that's kind of how I felt, right or wrong. So I shared that thought, but I think we need to have more of a partnership this time going through and take one step at a time without some grand plan to start small and build instead of we build it and now here it is. So just my perspective on the call relative to the subject of the FPO. So I think, I'm not sure there's too many other things that we covered that I haven't talked about. So Al, is there anything else from that call that I haven't covered that you want to mention?
You've hit the high points. Maybe we should ask Erin if there's anything we've missed here.
Yeah.
I assume was Aaron on the call?
Yes.
Oh, that's good to know. I hadn't heard your name mentioned, but I figured you were.
Well, at least somebody knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
No, that I think that's good. And yes, staff is trying to go through your drafts and the original drafts. We have been working on that. The building official is going through that for building code analysis, and the town engineer and I will get a copy of that afterwards and move forward. Some other information I think we touched upon, and Walter, I think you had reached out since we're on floodplain of what other towns along the Sound have done as far as base, elevation above base flood, look back, and the other third item that I actually looked into was the method of determining market value, whether it was a private appraisal or the town, the assessor's information. So I actually did that last week and went through all of the municipalities in Connecticut along the Sound and created a little chart. It's only on a legal pad. Currently, it has not been transferred to a typed document, but I will.
Well, that'll be good to have.
I think it's just useful to see the comparison and just at least to give that overview of where Madison falls within that.
And who'd you say was working on this now? Is it the building department or the town?
So the building official is currently reviewing the ordinance again and comparing, what needs to be updated to be in harmony with the building code.
Good. Okay.
I've done some looking at it. A lot of it, to me, looks very similar to other municipalities that I have had experience in. But once we get that draft, we'll make some other comments.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Well, if there's nothing more on that subject of the call, Graham's the only person who was also on it, but he's not here to throw his 2 cents in. So let's move on to the next subject, which is kind of interesting. We received a letter from 3 students at Daniel Hand High School, and they, I think I sent it out to you all. They're working on a project about sea level rise in Connecticut, Madison specifically, and they've got a series of questions that they've put down at the bottom of their letter asking us to respond to, which we will in writing. But I just wanted to alert you to the idea and to the fact that we have some of the students over there that are interested in the subject. They're, I don't know if it's part of a class, or it sounds like it's a project they have. I don't know what sort of class it's for, or what their timeline on completion is, those kinds of things. But I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was great that they sent it. And I think it's a good opportunity to have the Coastal Resiliency Commission respond to them and help them with help them with the answers they're trying to get. But also one more group of people within the school system and all the parents and others that would be, more cognizant of what we're doing and how we might be able to help the town in their planning for the rising waters. So I don't know if you all read it or have any comments on it.
Hank, I believe if you're interested, I believe those students are in the waiting room right now.
Oh.
If you'd like to hear from them directly.
Sure.
They are attendees, and we
good.
can move them over to panelists if you'd like to have them.
If
Join the
they
conversation.
if they want to, I don't want to put them on the spot. If you want to, raise your hand.
We have Dane, Kennedy, and Madeline here. I
Oh,
can
great.
allow you to talk. Let's
Yeah,
see.
let them talk. That'd be great.
Okay, let's see here.
I sent them an email at the last minute, or maybe they already knew all about it.
We see one there. There's Dane. Hi, Dane.
Hey, Dane.
Yep, and Madeline's coming too now,
Good.
and Kennedy's here. Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So we were just going over your inquiry of the commission, and we got your letter. Thank you very much for your interest. We appreciate it. And we will, as I don't know if you heard me say it earlier, we'll respond in writing to you, so you'll have some answers to your questions. But I was also, since you're here, and I'm glad you are, and by the way, I think I've mentioned to you, we meet the second Wednesday of every month. So if you have continued interest in the subject and specifically what the commission is doing and what the town's doing, you're welcome, just like all the other members of the community in Madison, to sign in each month or whenever you want to on those Wednesdays and listen in. And if you give Erin a heads up, maybe she'll put you in and you can talk. But anyway, what do you have to say tonight? You want to describe your project to us a little?
Sure. We were given a civic action project in our civics class. And so essentially we're reaching out to government officials in our community and either trying to bring awareness to a certain subject or trying to change something that we want to see in our community.
Great.
So that's is that part of your civics class?
Yeah.
And who's the teacher on that one?
We have Mrs. Joyner.
Thanks. Good.
It's kind of interesting. Yes, Joe, did you have something?
Yeah, I briefly read the letter before the meeting, and I was just curious where the number came up of the number of properties that would be affected. Was that given to you? Did you research that number? I just think it's very high.
We did some of our research on our own. So just looking through all the websites and stuff like that.
Okay.
Great. So, the commission deals with not just along the shoreline, but any sort of water, lake, pond, river that's might be subject to flooding. The thinking there is that as the years go by, we're likely to run into a situation where it's not only rising seas, but it's also inundation of water from extended or more frequent rainstorms. So we're a shore community. So we have a Coastal Resiliency Commission, but we are not solely concerned with the beach. We're also looking inland to areas within Madison that are probably not what people automatically think we're spending our time on, but we do talk to some of the other commissions that focus on that area, and we've communicated as best we can that it's broader than just the shoreline and the beach. Where it's for the whole town, since the whole town is a shore community. So just as a reference point, so if you hear us talk about a pond or a river or something, it's well within what we should be looking at. And beyond that, I don't know if anybody else has any comments. I was just going to say, I think it's, like I said earlier, I think it's great that we have this, and we will try, and we have this letter and we have this level of interest, and we'll try and get that response back to you as soon as we can. Any other comments?
Hank, I just say, we are, you probably, if you listened to the first part of this, we've been slow getting going because of COVID, and you students going to school just kept right on cranking right through your studies in spite of COVID, but this has been harder to get this group going. We're going to look for ways to communicate to the community broadly. Shannon and I were on, I think, Hank, with the Conservation Commission last couple of weeks ago, and they want to do more communication, and we might do something with them. Is that right, Shannon? Is that the way they left it?
Yep, the Conservation Commission does a lot of community outreach. We have a lot of booths at local events, Earth Day, Green Up, Cleanup, Bower Park, things like that. So we focus on a lot of invasive species. And then there's some kind of intersections we write reports and meet up with for proposed development in town, assess property that have been proposed. So kind of climate change and coastal resiliency, inland wetlands rising, that's all sort of connected. But we're going to kind of work together a little bit more. We're trying to
with the two commissions, and we could then think about making sure we invite high school students to whatever events we're going to try and run. I know Conservation Commission was talking about running one, and you folks, the three of you, might have some ideas about how we could communicate about what we're doing to the high school students. It might be directly or through you, whatever ways you might think about it.
So I was wondering, outside of the civics class and the specific project that you're on, do you guys and your friends ever talk about shoreline and rising water outside of schoolwork?
Yeah, I mean, I live by the beach, so whenever I go on walks, I notice like a lot of flooding and stuff if there's a lot of like major tropical storms or even just rainstorms and stuff. And also there's a lot of houses that have to be built so high because of the rising tides. And so I feel like we tend to talk about that with my family and with my friends.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a fairly pervasive subject these days. So yeah, thank you. So if we're finished with that subject, I didn't have anything else other than sort of just general discussion that we have every month at the end of the meeting. And if you don't have anything, I have something. So go ahead before me, anybody. So since nobody said anything,
just one thing, Hank. I think it's on your agenda about Garnet Park Road.
I'm sorry?
Is Garnet Park Road on the agenda?
No, I didn't put it on the agenda. Did I? Unless I sent out the wrong agenda.
I'm
I think
sorry.
you did under updates of projects.
That's my fault. Sorry, I apologize. All I had, that's why I said at the beginning, it's a fairly short agenda. It doesn't mean it's a short meeting. I just had the two items that we were just discussed. And then, unless you have an update for Garnet Park, which I do.
All I was thinking of, there isn't, but I think there'll probably be a time when we could work with CRC and Aaron to just look at what's, from the coastal resiliency perspective, what's happening with the bridge, and what about the other projects that are on coastal resiliency plan that came out of the 2016 plan. But it's nothing to be done now, but.
Yeah, I apologize. That's my fault. I sent the wrong one.
Okay, go ahead, Hank. No, we
yeah,
don't need to go through it now. We have nothing new to add on that at this point. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
But that's actually an interesting, that's somewhat related to the subject that I was going to bring up, because I was listening to the radio last night on my way home from Old Saybrook, and they were talking to an engineer out in San Francisco, and the engineer was talking about, okay, so here's my city. A lot of the roads are tight, and that person was looking at sewer pipes and underground culverts, and basically what they were talking about was water runoff in downtown San Francisco. And what I found interesting relative to how that might apply to us is the concept of the issue that they had in San Francisco is, okay, we have all this piping and we have all this, we can move water around and it goes down the drain like it's supposed to, but the drain and the pipes and everything is built for storms from 30, 40 years ago. And the storms that we're supposed to be building for today are for storms that are coming in the future. And one of the things I was thinking about relative to us and maybe to Garnet Park or to other bridges or other tunnels or other drainage, like Island Avenue and Middle Beach. The idea, okay, if we use, and I don't know anything about drainage pipes, but if we use the standard drainage pipe, whatever it is that we use, should we be using the one we use today, or should we go out and get a bigger one? And because if we're going to have, or a better one or a bigger one or some other thing that won't just be normal business as we've been doing for the last 10 or 20 years, but will now accommodate an increase in flooding, an increase in rain events, so that it doesn't get backed up. It's possible if the volume got so big that the new pipe couldn't handle it, we'd still have backup, right? So the idea is, are we using products that move this, in this case, drainage pipes and things? Are we using the ones that most will address what we think is coming, rather than what we know we can, rather than what we have today, and we're just going to replace it? And I don't know that we think like that. And I hadn't really thought about it specifically to drainage until I heard this last night. And so it's just a comment to think in terms of, from the town's perspective, okay, yes, we have rising water and more water, inundation in our mindset and in our plans when we're drawing up various bridges and culverts and drainage pipes, and we're not just looking back and saying, bring up what we put in 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We're now saying we need to get something bigger or longer or different that can accommodate a larger volume, just in general. That's all. It was just a thought that we should, not just the Coastal Resiliency Commission, but the town, the engineers, all the people that are actually out doing this work. Are they thinking in terms of, when I put a pipe in, I have X amount of water today, I'm gonna have 2X tomorrow. Will the pipe take 2X? That's all. Just an interesting comment. I have nothing more to add to it. Yes, Joe. Okay, you're on mute.
I didn't want to interrupt. So
Yeah, I was on a
I
roll.
think the Army Corps of Engineers probably are doing studies just, because they have control of a lot of the areas that you're talking about. So I don't know if Aaron has seen anything coming through the pipeline from the Army Corps of Engineers that would address the issues that Hank was talking about.
I think they do have requirements for, based on storm events, in a flood zone as far as the size of whether it's a culvert or the bridge opening. And I think, well, I know that in wetlands as well, there are certain standards that have to be met for for water flow or for habitat, things like that. And that often, yes, when culverts are replaced, they're replaced larger than what's existing. But I'm not an engineer either, so
you got the culvert. So think, Hank, about the 2016 plan, which was put together by the consultants, goes over the areas in the town that are likely to flood. I'm not sure I was just looking at it on my iPad, couldn't find a map, whether they considered the 2050 20-inch sea level rise or not in that map. But if you take a look at, say, the first thing we're looking at right now is the Garnet Park Bridge, that some folks from the CRC Commission, you and maybe one others and Aaron, should just have a discussion with the town engineer about how we're thinking about that bridge in today's world and at 2050. And then Al's pointed this out a few times as well in our commission meetings. But it might be good to just take a specific project that's moving right now and say, how does that sit up against the maps that we did in the 2016 plan and the sea level rise that would go 20 inches? And then maybe that's already been considered and what's going to be considered by the town engineer, but it'd be a good discussion between, say, you and Aaron and the town engineer and maybe one other expert.
So, yeah, and my update that I can provide for Garnet Park Bridge is that there is an engineer that has been hired and it's under the design phase. So it's not the town engineer is not doing any of the design work on that bridge replacement. I understand that bridge replacement to be under Army Corps jurisdiction. So there will be,
because of where it is, it's under Army Corps. So that the engineers can
I think that's true. And so
is the engineer retained by the town?
Yes, yes, through a bid process for an RFQ process. And I'm trying to remember the name of, I think it is the company that was formerly known as Anchor Engineering, and they have either joined with another firm, but I think they were formerly Anchor. And
so they will bring the design to the town engineer, where do they who do they report?
Yes. So they will, once they have a design, they will go to the town, and also they will have to go through the whole permitting process.
Right. Okay. But they're going to try and hit, you think, Army Corps of Engineers standards. That's where they're going to be going.
Well, I think if they have to apply for the permit, there are requirements they have to meet. It may also require deep permits.
Okay. Thanks.
So it's a highly regulated bridge.
Yeah. What about the rest of the road, though, the projects that are on that 2016 plan for the western part that goes out towards the Sound or the eastern part? Those would still be Army Corps, or that just be town? Well,
that's a town road, my understanding of most of Garnet Park, at least. And those I don't believe have been scheduled as part of
no, they aren't. You're absolutely right.
CIP project.
No, you're absolutely right. And Al would know
at this point, it's the bridge. The bridge replacement is a result of DOT regular inspections and safety concerns.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And of course, the other project that's at the top of the list is the intersection of Middle Beach Road and Island Avenue. And the question we were talking about at our last meeting was whether that has been designed to take care of the current situation or whether that's being designed to take care of anticipated future situations.
Right. So there's in the CIP plan, I believe there is planning dollars to be set aside as of July 1st of this year. And so those planning dollars would then, start allow the process to begin of getting an engineer involved to study that. Because again, that's not these are outside consultant projects that are not done in-house.
And just to ask real quickly, and so we get an engineering person in and we have specs and an outline of what we think is, who would remind or ask or tell that engineer that this has to be, you need to think in terms of not today and what we've done in the past, but what we need to do 20, 30, 40 years from now, if that's the life of this project, and what we might, particularly in a place like Island Avenue in Middle Beach, are we designing it for the future, or are we designing it to replace what we already have? And I'm wondering who does that? Who asks that question?
I think the commission as a whole, that's your role, to put that in writing to the town engineer of your thoughts and trying to, that particular project I don't believe is identified in the 2016 plan. However, it has been identified since then as a high concern for coastal resiliency, and I think you can explain the reasons why this is of concern and what the commission's goals would be in addressing this. I think it's, that's a fairly large drainage system, I think, heading down to that intersection. So I think the initial phase will be the town engineer creating some type of scope of what will entail that, either tracking that system back to, to see what that watershed is that's leading into that drainage system. And then also considering the impacts of the tides, in that pipe that outlets into the water, and that vault system that's in the beach as well. So.
Hank, I think you've asked a very good question, and it's kind of an unprecedented question because this commission hasn't existed in the past. But I think it's up to Erin and I to make sure that this commission is consulted as various steps along the way with these projects. I think we need to formalize how we're going to do that. But I believe that this commission should become a player in helping the town figure out whether the engineer has designed the right project. Now, that's just me talking, but because this is all new, I think we have to work out a procedure to make sure that the wisdom of this commission is included in developing the final engineering plan.
I don't know. I mean, this is me personally. Graham being the engineer may have a wholly different approach, but for me, I just want to make sure that we get that question in front of the right people at the right time before they've committed to a particular design and told everybody and gotten approval for it. And, oh yeah, we never thought of that. Well, next time. Well, no, I'd like to be able to get to a place in the process, and I'm not familiar with the process, that's why I asking the question, is at what point do we remind or notify, or whatever the right word is, those involved, be they vendors or people that are part on the town staff, here's what we want to do, and we want to make sure that we're considering that, and we want something that says that you're actually considering it, not just a nod of the head, but saying, yes, here are our plans, and part of our plan is that this will sustain, we believe this will sustain for the next 40 years, even with, expected water table rises and the various floods and things we plan on having or expect to have. So that's all. Just, it was just part of my, because I don't know the answer, that's why I was asking the question, right? Like, who actually gets where the rubber meets the road and says, make sure it includes this, and if it doesn't specifically include it, put it in. That's all. It's just my not being familiar with the process.
Yeah, I think that goes back also to how important it is to have communication between this commission and the engineering department.
Yeah,
Because
I think so.
infrastructure improvements, absolutely, the town engineer should have a good relationship with the commission.
And then these things are done, Aaron, these things are done sometimes in small steps. We can start, and Garnet Park is going, we can be talking to the town engineer about Garnet Park, and then the next step is talk about the Island Avenue.
Sure. I mean, the design phase, it may take a while. I don't know what the actual schedule is for Garnet Park.
And I'm looking at some discussion, process. Just looking back as we revamp or relook at our plan, some discussion with the town engineer about once they build the bridge and it meets Army Corps of Engineers specs, then you still got to connect both ends of the road to the bridge, and the town's going to have to do something. And I'm not the engineer, but to think ahead, even though that project may not be on any capital plan now, will it have to be in order to make it all work together?
Right. I don't know what the plan is. I have a feeling they're not anticipating, a bridge that's so many feet taller than the existing road where you're now having.
You might not, you're right. They probably, but I would just think, starting with a conversation between the CRC folks, you and the town engineer about a couple of things, just to start a conversation before we get that.
Yeah, and I think we brought that up at the last meeting too, that to kind of reach out and give an invitation if the town engineer had some availability, Yeah,
and I don't think you need to have him make a presentation to this group. First shot out of it, the first shot should just be over coffee.
That's what we said.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I agree. Yeah, but sure, absolutely, and for him to be familiar with the coastal resiliency plan and consider that in designs.
Yeah, that's really the goal. I'm not looking to take the project over. What I just want to be sure that the town engineer is extremely mindful of what this is going to look like in 20, 30, 10 years, and are we planning for that? Perhaps that, it's, even if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be bad news. So, but in case it does happen, relative to the sea level rise and the flooding and things, we need to plan for it.
Sure.
All right. Anyway, enough. I'll stop beating the dead horse. Any other topics anybody wants to cover? If not, we can adjourn. All right. Thank you very much.